Hi, welcome to another episode of Left Behind Natives. Today I have the distinct honor of speaking with Chief Michelle Gilmore of the Southeastern Mvskoke Nation. Chief Gilmore is a respected leader whose influence extends across Alabama and beyond. From her work with the Alabama Indian Affairs Commission to her cultural advocacy through storytelling and education, she embodies strength, vision, and dedication. We'll be discussing the challenge of leading a state-recognized tribe in today's world, touching the financial barriers, community needs, cultural preservation, and her inspiring leadership, which to me has actually been an inspiration as well. Let's go ahead and dive in. Chief Gilmore, thanks for coming on. How are you doing? Tell us a little bit about yourself, if you would, please.
It's great to be on your show. I've heard a lot about it. I work for my money from the ALDOT. That's my full-time job. Of course, running the tribe and being their chief is also a full-time job. I'm married. I have 4 boys, all grown, and I have 1 grandson. And my husband also works for the ALDOT. I was elected chief, and I can't remember, I think 2019. This is my 7th year being the chief of Southeastern Mvskoke Nation. When I first became a citizen of the tribe, it was not very many people coming around. The former chief and his wife were older, and they were still under the mindset of, let's don't associate with the other tribes. Let's kind of keep our little spot quiet and hidden. And that's what they were doing. And when I was elected chief and the new council had their first meeting, and I asked them at that point, do you want to continue just treading water, or do you want to see how far we can take it? And they said, let's move forward. And so that's what we've been doing ever since. I've been trying to grow. I've gotten out in the public, meeting everyone. I was put on the commission. I met the other tribal leaders, and we all started associating together and trying to help each other. And I feel like our new director of Alabama Indian Affairs Commission, Barry Mask, has really helped bridge that gap where that we are kind of coming together and helping each other, whereas before we never really did anything together. So I'm looking forward to what he's going to do for us as well.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about Barry. I've spoken to him on the phone several times, written him a number of emails. I've always worried I'm bothering him because I know he's got a lot of weight on his shoulders, and just one citizen like myself of a tribe that's not even, a representative of any kind, sending them letters, asking them some serious questions. But that gives me an opportunity. That leads me to ask you a question that you mentioned, something that one of the things that I greatly respect about you, that I would love to know, and I really had thought about asking you off camera, but I'm going to ask you since it kind of goes along with this first question I had for you. You mentioned that when they elected you to be the chief of your tribe, that the council had agreed for you to help take this tribe as far as you could. Now, I'd like to give the viewer a little backstory. With your tribe and with one other in the state of Alabama, which I'm not going to mention, they're great folks, and I love them just like, the members of your tribe that I know personally are just unbelievably great people. I didn't know much about you at first. And since 2019, I have seen a lot going on. I have, and it's inspiring to me. And I know that I can tell by your language and how you've spoken that your tribe's council, the people who work with you and in some ways for you, although I realize that as public servants of your tribe, you all work for the tribe, which is really important. I'd just love to know how it is that you guys have come to agree on the idea of moving forward. And I'm asking this from my own experience and the struggles I've had trying to get, I guess it's okay for me to say, my own tribe to move forward. I just don't know. What's your secret? How do you get everybody to come together and the perspective of that? I mean, I know the members want to move forward, even in my own tribe, but the council, they're still politically correct, I'll say, on the fence, is what they are. How did you inspire your people to move forward?
Well, gosh, I really don't know how to answer that. I guess when you call it the regime change and I became chief, so did the council. A lot of the people were younger. We're all elected. Yeah, we're all elected officials. Okay. I don't become elected as chief and then I choose my council. Everybody has to run for their position. So
that's wonderful.
It just all kind of changed, and a lot of the young people stepped forward. In the past, nobody wanted this position because, I mean, it's a labor of love. You don't draw a paycheck. You have to do it because you love it. And they do it because they love it.
You'll forgive me for interjecting. But I feel like, and this is my own perspective, and I don't mean you or your tribe or your position in your tribe, but I feel like even though you may have people thank you as the chief of an Indian tribe, it's oftentimes a thankless job. In some ways, it's one that you spend a lot of your own personal time in, and you don't get, there's no tangible anything. But I've got to tell you, Michelle, one of the things that I respect, and maybe it's more so with Creek Indians than it is with some of my own people. But the one thing I greatly respect is I see a lot of your people, they really love you. That's what I think anyway. That's what I see. So,
well, I'll back up just a little bit. Before I was elected, I came to every meeting. I mean, I grew up knowing my ancestors, but I didn't know anything about our culture because my parents, my grandparents, they were still in that same mindset of hiding. They just didn't talk about it. So I went out on my own and researched, and I found the tribe, and I put all my paperwork together, and they, accepted me as a citizen there. So I have in almost, I don't know, getting close to 20 years, I can count on one hand how many meetings I've missed. And we have a meeting once a month. The second Saturday of every month is when we all meet on the grounds. The first time I walked out there on the grounds, it's breathtaking. Our grounds are beautiful. And I saw all the potential. And I thought, why are we hiding? There's no reason for us to hide. Troy, Alabama didn't even know we were there. When we decided to have our first festival, me and several other council members took days off work and we hit the ground and go into all the businesses asking for sponsorships. And they're like, what? There's an Indian tribe in Troy? They didn't even know who we were. But after our first festival, I can promise you they know who we are now. It was an amazing turnout. I mean, we hit the ground. We put everything out there we could. We advertised. We talked about it. And we had a great turnout for that very first time. And when I walked out there and I looked and saw all those people, I cried because it was everything that we had ever wanted. And they know who we are. We welcomed them, and they loved that we're there. So when I was asked,
I've got to tell you, that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it was.
It's really an amazing thing to hear. Yeah,
it was. When I never saw myself as being the chief or advocated to run for chief, one of our elders approached me and asked me if I would run for chief. And at that point I said, Albert, you forgot more than I'll ever know. I don't think that I'm qualified to be the chief. And he looked at me and he said, you don't have to be qualified. He said, you just got to have it right here. He said, and I can tell you, you have it right there. So I blame everything on him every time I see him. It's everything that's ever happened since then is his fault. But that's really why.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, Michelle, my experience with you in the short few times that we've had a chance to communicate, I can promise you, and my experience with the countless other leaders of various tribes, you have what it takes, I promise you. You're doing a great job. One thing that I seen on your tribe's website that was also inspiring. Once again, I don't know if it's been there since before you became the chief or after you became the chief or while you were, before you were elected in, you had another position there. But I noticed something that I have tried to push with my own tribe's organizational group within the tribe that's been very difficult to get. And that was the tribe services. And when I seen the tribe services and what they could apply for to benefit from, to help them, I know why it is that you had so many people that were younger stepping up to those council positions and applying for them. And that's a problem that I can tell you that other tribes, for example, some that I've mentioned and probably some that I haven't, have some difficulty getting the young folks involved with everything. Mm-hmm. But when they see that the people join together, when they see that the people have got their back, when their leaders have got their back and they want to help them, then they realize that it's only going to happen if I help others do the same thing and continue on and so forth. And on a side note, leading into this next question I've got for you, while I was on your tribe's website, which I still have up on one of my browser tabs because I really admire it, by the way. I have made, as you know, for my own business websites, and I've made other websites and what have you, but the functionality of it is the thing that I really admire. It looks good. It does what it needs to do. It's got some things going on that me and another member of my tribe had worked really hard to put together for our tribe before it was, for lack of a better word, I'll say decommissioned. But the thing that I was amazed at, which you have just wide open to the world, is your enrollment criteria. And this, like I said, leads into my next question. I admire the fact that, number one, you put that out there, because a lot of state tribes feel like, well, our criteria is important, but we don't want this group, belittling us, or this group belittling us. The thing that I noticed was a requirement, and it's something that I haven't discussed on this podcast, but I will be on another episode with another member from another Creek tribe, by the way, one that's not state recognized, but it is an official tribe from Florida, because she has one of these same numbers. It's the Eastern Creek roll numbers that most of the general public doesn't even know exists. Right. The Eastern Creek roll numbers, they the general public believes, most of what it's told, mind you, but they believe that Indian roll numbers stopped in 1909 in Oklahoma, and they don't know about those EC numbers that we have from Alabama, from Florida, from the Southeast. I feel like with my own people, those roll numbers may have helped out a little bit if we had stood up and been enumerated at some point in time. But, like you just pointed out, our actual Native American family that is documented proof of, they have documented proof of who they are, they wanted to hide. Let me tell you something about this. Once again, I still need to get into this question, but a lot of the hecklers out there, or naysayers, or people that don't want, make sure I say this loud and proud, the people out there that don't want the general public to know that there's a EC number, okay, that there's an Eastern Creek enrollment number, the people that are speaking out against, any of us, if they're speaking out against you, they have no reason to speak out against you, by the way, but if they have spoken out against any of us, they always try to say that, if you don't have a Dawes number, you're not Indian. And, if your family supposedly hid from the government, you're not Indian. But like one of my cousins in my tribe have been communicating back and forth the last couple of days about our ancestry. We've been on Facebook. He's been posting some pictures and some things of his ancestors. A lot of my family were documented on the census originally as Black. I've got a group of them that are documented as Black, and even on an actual federal census record, it has a line through it and it says white. Did you just not know when you walked up to these folks? And but there's a lot of places, even the Federal Census Bureau admits that people may have been mislabeled based on what time frame they were in, whatever area they were living in. I do have a great granddad from Virginia that says that he was a slave, and most people think, well, he must have been African American, but actually the role that he's on is actually an Indian role. So he was just a freed Indian slave, and there's countless other examples of this kind of thing. People oftentimes forget that there were times in our history that you didn't want to mention that you were Indian, because especially during the 1800s, they're going to send you to Oklahoma,
Exactly.
And with those EC numbers, it's a perfect proof, case in point that, you're Indian and you didn't go to Oklahoma, So
Exactly.
Anyway, if you would, let me get to this question, because I'm gonna feel terrible if I don't get to the question. As a chief of a state recognized tribe, what unique financial challenges do you encounter compared to federally recognized tribes, and how do you address those?
Well, of course, state recognized tribes do not receive any funding from the state at all. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. We survive off grants, donations, charity. Our tribe does pay a citizenship fee every year. We do fundraisers. We scrape up, however we can. Now, we have recently formed an LLC, and that's in the process of getting up and running. So hopefully when we get that going, then we'll be able to be a self-sustaining tribe. That's my goal. That's where I want to see us be there. We've got a lot of great citizens who own their own business, construction, heating and air, whatever that could help, with the LLC and get us some jobs going so we can be self-sustaining. So we're in the process of doing that, but money's always an issue. We have goals and things that we want to do and see happen on our grounds. This week, we received a grant. We're putting up a cultural center. It's being built as we speak. So hopefully by the time we have our festival this year, we can have a grand opening for that. So that's the exciting thing. So we've got a lot of people helping write grants. It's a hard job, but we're keeping our head above water and we keep on moving forward. We don't let anything knock us down.
Well, that's really incredible. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. It's funding, I know, is a big challenge. Sometimes I feel like, and I hope that none of the redheaded people out there will take offense at this, but I grew up in the 90s, and my parents, of course, grew up in the 50s and 60s, and so I've heard the phrase redheaded stepchild a lot, but that's how you got to feel sometimes,
Oh, absolutely.
It's just,
yeah.
You're the odd man out. You're the odd one out, and especially over in this corner of Alabama. Now, our state does a lot for a lot of tribes, and there's some things that you and I will discuss in the near future, not of course on camera, but I promise you we'll discuss them, that are some things that could benefit all of us, and there's ways that we could all get some great things going on. But it sounds like y'all have a lot of it under your belt. It really does. My chief, our first chief of my tribe, go ahead.
I was going to say, I should mention that the Alabama Indian Affairs Commission, with the new director, Barry, actually tripled the budget. So this past year, for the very first time, the Indian Affairs Commission has given us grants. So we got a grant from them this past year that put a new roof on our tribal office, and he's keeping it going for this year. We'll get another grant. So I have to take back what I said. They are helping us now because he can't afford to help us. In the past, they could not.
Sure. Right.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, I was going to mention that my first chief, who was actually the chief, my tribe, the United Cherokee Aniwea tribe that I'm currently enrolled with, has always been looked at by the other two Cherokee tribes in North Alabama as an offshoot of the Achota tribe. That's what I hear all the time, especially from the elders. And that's because our chief and a number of the early council members, as well as a few of the members that are still alive today, used to be a member of the Achota tribe. And when I first became active in my tribe, I brought to the attention to my chief, who and she's passed on, but I still admire her greatly today because of the strength, the work that, like I see you doing, a lot of it single-handedly, and once again, I know you've got people working with you, but when you're at the top of a success that's going on, it's hard not to see you as being the focus of the success. I realize that your council, your people especially, are a great benefit to the tribe and how things are going, and I can hear that in your voice and how much you respect them, which like I said, that just, that means a lot. But when Chief Gina, I had approached her some years ago, I had looked into a bunch of grants and I had gotten mildly proficient at that myself. I told her, look, here's a grant for housing, and it's a grant for housing that is a federal grant that state and federal tribes can apply for. Now, that grant has long since gone by the wayside. It was under HUD, and it's been, I think, about, I'd love to say about 15 or 16 years ago. So I don't know if it exists anymore, but I keep my eyes open for things like that regularly. Right. And when I approached her and I said, well, look, here is, I said, here's a grant that you can apply for our tribe that will get them housing. I had my own thing going on. I didn't need a house, so I wasn't trying to get something for myself. But I told her, I said, here's something you can apply for. And she said, no. She said, I don't want to take monies away from federal tribes. And I thought, that's a weird thing to say. And of course, I still have a great deal of respect for her. However, there's a little document floating around in my tribe that I had mentioned to you off camera that is probably the reason that she said that. And, right. Once again, I'll be glad to fill in the blank with that. But she was still trying to do things for the tribe separately and independently, whereas I see today there are grants out there for people that don't have to go through the extenuous work, research, and proof that we have to as a tribe in a state that's recognized us as a tribe, So I don't see there being any problem for us applying for those grants. And I hope that, it sounds like you don't feel like there is either, which I 100%, if there's ever anything I can do about that or send you some information in a good direction, I'd be glad to. Because I've gotten several grants. I've tried to apply for a few with my tribe, and those have fallen, what was that politically correct thing I said earlier? They have fallen along the wayside, I think maybe with some of the bureaucracy with certain organizational groups. I could ramble this stuff on, but you know what I mean. You've served on the Alabama Indian Affairs Commission since 2022 and the Governor's Advisory Board on Minority Affairs, which thank you for that, by the way. How have these roles amplified your tribe's voice, and what success has come from this additional platform? How has it helped y'all?
Well, we have definitely got more popular. And I have met some very, very influential people. Stacia Robinson with the Minority Affairs, she is awesome. She really is. And I met her by chance back when we tried to form the Tribal Alliance. And we were meeting at a little barn up in North Alabama. Seth had already met Stacia, and he had invited her to that meeting. So she was there, and that's the first time I met her. And then I just kind of maintained a friendship with her. And then the next thing I know, she's calling me to ask me if I would sit on the board. So they have a lot of great things going on, and she has really been a big supporter of our tribe. She was a big sponsor for our festival last year. As a matter of fact, she was in our grand entry, and we had her an Alabama Office of Minority Affairs flag made, and she carried it proudly. So she's helped us a lot, and it's just, I guess it's networking. I've met a lot of people. Like I told you yesterday, that being where I am at ALDOT in Montgomery, I can just scoot down to the State House and walk the floors and meet the senators and the House representatives. So I've been able to get in there and do that, and through connections through all of these places, it's got our name out there. So that has that's helped a lot for people to start to know who we are.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. It's also good to see that, and I know it's such a small thing, making that flag for Stacy to go out there, but that's a good recognition and representation. And I'm once again, I think if I just save all of my comments, my opinions, and what I think about what you and your tribe have going on, if I just say them at the end of our interview here, it'll probably go a lot quicker. And I'll just tell you, I'm flabbergasted. I'm amazed, and once again, honored that you've taken a moment of your time to share this with me, because you have a lot of good stuff going on. And Seth too.
I just like to say
very helpful
that,
dude. Yeah.
Yes. I like to say that I'm big on making friends. You can't have enough of them. So that's what I try to do, is have a handout to anybody. I don't know that, if I can help them in any way, come and support them, that's what I'm going to do, because, it's kind of like you pat my back, I pat yours. And that's what we've been doing. We're working together. Right. We want everybody to be successful, and not just my tribe, all of them.
Yeah, that's actually a true Alabama philosophy, by the way. Once again, all my genealogical studies of my family has led me to see, I've had this family member who was one of the first representatives in the state, and this one who was a judge, and this one who helped found a certain college, one of everybody's favorite colleges here in Alabama, and then this family member that did this and that and the other. I see that it's actually an Alabama motif. And that Alabama motif, once again, looking back through those people, there's a lot of those folks that were Indian or of Indian descent, or, there's some of them that kept the tribe going, and then there's some of them that were part of the tribe genetically, but they took what they learned at home, and that's our beautiful state here, which I appreciate, like I said, all the things that you're doing. Now, tribal life in modern times brings complex individual needs, from mental health to cultural identity. How does your tribal council support the members while balancing tradition and modern services? I notice there's a lot of that going on there, so if you would speak to it just a little bit.
Okay. Well, first of all, our maker of medicine, his phone is always on to anybody who needs to talk. And believe me, I wear him out constantly, because just things that I have, ways I may feel, and I keep it, within me. I don't want anybody else to know. I'll call him up and say, hey, I need to get some things off my chest. He said, all right, let's hear it. So we can talk things out, and anybody who calls him can talk to him the same way, or to me for that matter, or anyone on our council. So we kind of have our own therapy sessions going on in that matter, but we have a lot of people who are in the medical field. We have one who just recently opened up her own office, and then we have Dr. Rudisell, who's up in Birmingham area. So they tried to advocate to all of the tribes. As a matter of fact, Hannah, who just opened up her own clinic, wants to come before the Indian Affairs Commission, and she has a proposal to help all the tribes and all the citizens of the tribe at a discounted rate, whatever they may need. She's got the telehealth going on, so that's a big plus. So that's our way of trying to help, each other and our other tribal families too. Yeah,
that's, once again, I'll save all my appreciation to the end, because I could go on. It's just amazing, how much organization you guys all have, and I'm very proud for you, and proud to know that at least somewhere that kind of thing is going on, which is beautiful.
Yeah.
You have a book out, and you've had some storytelling presentations, but your book, if I'm not mistaken, I didn't have a lot of time to research it, as I have several of the other books, but I will put a link to it in this episode, by the way, if that's okay with you. But it's called Their Life, Their Path, My Ancestors. It has gained a lot of attention, and I'd like to ask you, how do these efforts help to strengthen cultural ties and community engagement within your community, but beyond? How does that work?
Well, I'll tell you a little bit of how that happened. There's another friend that I had made. Her name is Dr. Sherry Williams, and she works over at the Ridge in Macon County, the archaeology group there. And once a year, they had the Old Federal Road storytelling event. So by chance, she
Right.
called me one day and asked me if I'd be interested in coming and speaking. And I've never been a public speaker or a storyteller. And I said, so how long do you want me to speak? She said, oh, for 30 minutes. I said, well, I'll probably pass out. I'd have never had to speak for that long. But she called me probably 4 or 5 months in advance. And the more I thought about it, I've had this story brewing inside of me for years. So I said, you know what? I'm going to put it on paper. And so I was ready. I was terrified, but I was ready. My husband told me, he said, well, when you get up there, he said, don't look anybody in the eye. He said, look over their head, just, right above their head. He said, because you don't want to see how anybody's feeling. So when I got up there and I started, and I was scared, but something just clicked, and the story took over. I cry every single time I tell it. I can't help it. I boo-hooed up there. And when I was done, 36 minutes later, I got a standing ovation. And I was just overwhelmed.
Oh,
I could not believe it. And I had more people say, I have never heard that history before. Never heard it. So it was worth, being terrified. And I'm still terrified when I speak. I don't consider myself a storyteller at all. My daddy was a storyteller. But my husband told me that day, he said, you channeled your dad. You really did. He said you could just tell immediately when the switch flipped, and he took over. He led you through it, and he did.
Oh,
and that story is it's a lot about they're his ancestors too, and so it was good to be able to tell their story. And it's a funny thing, because I don't know if you read it or not, and I'm crying now. I'm a descendant of Chief Michelle. He was my 6th great-grandfather. And his great-granddaughter, Mary Ryder, who has an EC number as well, married a Campbell. And they had 11 children. Mm-hmm. And we do not know. I was the only descendant of Michelle in my tribe for years. I thought, where are all these other people? And once I started doing the storytelling and really getting out there, it's like they've all found their way to our tribe. We probably got 50 descendants in our tribe from Michelle now, and they're still coming.
Wow!
They spread, when everybody went into hiding. They scattered, and within the past year, they've all found their way home. It is amazing to meet my cousins. And some didn't just live down the road from me, and I never knew it. So it's been a story that's been definitely worth telling. And it's not just my ancestors; it's the history of Alabama and how it all started from burnt corn to Fort Mims and ended basically at Horseshoe Bend. It's a history that people don't know. And that's what they said that day I told it. They said, we've never heard this history before. And what makes it worth it, I was scared to put it out there because I knew that a federal tribe person was going to get it and they were going to bash me at any chance that they could get. But I know my ancestors and I know who I am. But for these people who have never heard that story before to cry right along with me, it's worth it. And I'll keep telling it. They want me to tell it.
That's powerful stuff. Yeah.
They keep telling me to keep telling.
That's wonderful. Yeah, that's great. I will tell you my own experience. I used to set up at Fort Mims and sell my flutes down there all the time during the reenactment. And it's an amazing place. It really is. There's been so many things go on there. I feel like the squirrels probably shudder at the time of the reenactment because the sound of those guns going off just all day long is something else. But there's a lot of places like that people don't know. They don't know the history of this, that, or the other. They don't know how we got here or what we're doing here. And I've mentioned it on other occasions that Chief Ross of the Cherokee Nation, for example, was born in Alabama. You know, he was born in Turkeytown, you know, which is Coleman, I think. But you know, Sequoia, he settled down and, you know, wrote what we call Cherokee alphabet. He wrote it in Alabama near Russell Cave. And there's just so much of that you know, you and I know that I'm hoping that eventually we'll be able to share a bigger presentation of that with the world. And, you know, there's a lot of the history of this wonderful state from a Native American's perspective that, you know, the world doesn't know. And your ancestor there is one of those people, you know, one of those great people that it's important. And I'm so glad you speak about it, and so glad you tell people about it, because that's how we stay around. That's how we survive, and how we, you know, grow and prosper and live forward. I know my wife, on example, she for a while she heard me say, "Oh, I bet this is my cousin." You know, we have a restaurant that just popped up about an hour and a half from here. It's one of my favorite restaurants. It's really a great place to go. I'll tell you about it off camera if you like. But there was somebody that was their manager, and I told her, I said, "I bet you that's my cousin." You know, and this restaurant seats 1,200 people. You know, I mean, this is a classy place. It's not it's not an expensive place, but it's a classy place. So my cousin that runs this place, you know, he came out to our table. I'm like, "Hey man, you know much about your family's ancestry?" And he's like, "No." He said, "We all come from California." I said, "You did recently." You know, but I told him, I said, "You moved there from Alabama." I said, "You moved there from Alabama. We have a mountain named after you that my family grew up on. My aunt married one of your uncles." You know, and he's like, "Wow, this is amazing." You know, and it's guaranteed, because there's not, you know, there's only so many of this kind and so many of that kind of people in the world that have this last name. And if they've lived in the United States for the last 200 years, I know where they're from, you know. But anyway, there's a lot of that. And my wife, like I say, she was getting kind of curious about my mental state, I think, at one point, saying, "Well, that's my cousin over there." And
we're all
I've got
related.
her doing it now.
Yeah.
We are all related. You know, Plains Indian people have been saying that for a long time. And we finally here in the Southeast started catching on.
That's right.
But well, listen, media appearances like, that's right. When you have been on shows from PBS as another river to cross, to podcasts, you have brought awareness to Southeastern Mvskoke people. First off, thank you for that. But how do you see storytelling and media influences and public perception, which is really the real question here? How do you see that public perception as a strategy in helping us be known and you know, heard more of anyway? I can rephrase that if you need me to.
No, I think the public perception, from what I can tell from storytelling and the events that I've been to, I think when we start telling that history, it draws people in, and they have accepted and welcomed us. From what I'm seeing, from my experience, I haven't felt any negativity. I did have one person who bashed me on social media of my book, but he was not from a federal tribe. He was actually a preacher, and he was yeah, it was pretty shocking. And I actually sent him a message, and I said, "Why were you attacking me? You don't even know who I am. You don't know me. You don't know my history." But he never responded. So that's the only negativity I've experienced. But once I did a little research on him, I found out he just doesn't like American Indians, period. So there you go. He thinks we stole the land from them.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's some of them out there too.
Yeah, that's right.
But I was going to tell you a little twist on my story. You know, I'm Cherokee as well, not just Creek. My other grandfather my grandmother and my grandfather. My grandmother was a descendant of Minowa. My grandfather was a descendant of White Path and Thomas Ridge, the White's lieutenant. And my grandfathers fought against each other at Horseshoe Bend, which I found to be really an amazing story with a twist. And then generations later, their descendants marry each other. So that was a pretty cool twist to that whole story. But I'm sorry I got off subject.
That is really interesting. No, not at all. No, that is the subject right there, Chief. I'll tell you. I've had similar experiences in my life. It's amazing how these kind of things happen. But the Upton side of my family, when they left, I think they may have actually started in Kentucky, but when my family left Kentucky, a lot of the Uptons that stayed behind are what Southerners used to call turncoats. The city of Upton, Kentucky, by the way, the town named after one of my ancestors, was a Union town, and it's interesting because the great, grandson of the man that the town's named after fought in a Civil War and worked for Andrew Jackson, and this is once again another topic for another episode, because there's things the general public doesn't know, like the land. Well, I mean, for example, the work that Cherokees did for the government, for Andrew Jackson, working together with him to displace Creek Indians, and there's so much of that people just don't know, that's why Sam Houston, that's why you got people like Sam Houston, who was adopted by my great-great-great-great-granddad, but he was like the Indian interpreter for Andrew Jackson and did a lot of work for him. And his adoptive brother, I guess you would call him, because he was adopted into my Indian family. He eventually, I would love to say, got the shaft, as we say, because eventually things didn't turn out well necessarily for Cherokee people. Of course, I'm not trying to substantiate the claim that all Cherokees moved to Oklahoma or what have you, but things didn't work out for the largest portion of the tribe. The biggest chunk of them moved to Oklahoma. And that was after working for Andrew Jackson. And I look back on it. I've got one of the land grant papers that Andrew Jackson gave to one of my great granddads, and he signed it. He actually, it wasn't a government that signed it. It wasn't a government agency. It was actually Andrew Jackson. It wasn't a rubber stamp. It wasn't what we call a rubber stamp today. I forget, auto pen.
Yes,
that'll really place this episode. It'll date this episode, the auto pen. But anyway, he didn't rubber stamp it. This was Andrew Jackson's signature. And I know this because I compared that signature to the one on Sam Houston's. You can go to Sam Houston's Wikipedia page. And after I say this, somebody with some power may remove it. But fortunately, I downloaded a copy of it off their Wikipedia page. But Sam Houston has a permission slip that says, "You have permission to be Cherokee Indian." It says that. I'm like, what are we in elementary school? But it says that. And I mean, no disrespect to the Houston family or Sam's name, but that's an interesting thing. That's something that we all need to talk about, that he has, this signature. But the signature on there from Andrew Jackson's the same one that matches my other great-great-granddad's signature, saying you can have this land in North Alabama for working for me, and it's just amazing. I've got two of those people in my family, great-great-granddads, that received that land in the 1830s. And, it's amazing to think of the power and the importance and the significance of these kind of things that the general public, sometimes if you read about it in a history book when you're in the 10th grade, you don't think anything of it. These are conversations we need to keep having. So thank you so much for bringing those kind of things up. And certainly it's it's so critical, and maybe one day, maybe we'll have a program of just talking about those kind of things. That'd
Right,
really be the way to go. It would be
right.
something else.
Well,
But anyway,
White
getting on the next one.
Okay.
Like, go ahead.
I was
No, no,
just
no,
gonna
no. You started. I
No,
need
I
to
was
hear
gonna
this.
say that White Path did travel the Trail of Tears. Of course, he died on the Trail of Tears, but Thomas Ridge left with his family and made his way into Coosa County, Alabama, where he lived out. He did not live much longer. He ended up dying of a fever, but changed his last name to White. So he became Thomas Ridge White, and that is my maiden name, is White. So some did scatter, some stayed, and they were, same family. One left and one stayed. So you can't say that they all went like they want to say. They did not all go. Memoir traveled the Trail of Tears too, but there's no record of him ever entering. And some wanted to say he died, but he didn't die. I don't know if you are familiar with Christopher Haveman, the author who wrote a book about it, and he's got all the records. And yeah, he said he did make it there, but there's just no record of his name coming in there. So what happened to him? Where'd he go? Our family records say he came back, but we still do not know how he died, or where he died, or where he's buried. Some say that they do, but I don't know. All I know is that he is my sixth great grandfather.
Right.
And he had many.
Right.
He had a couple more wives.
That's important stuff. And
he had 3 wives, I believe, and my grandmother was his first, who did die the day after the Battle of Horseshoe Bend, when they came in and raided the tribal town that she was in. She died along with they had an infant son who died as well. So the other children are my grandmother's too. So a lot of interesting history.
That's
to be told. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll tell you this. Oh my goodness, trying to see how I'm going to frame this, not to tell on me, but I did ask certain historical people about the significance of that 5th great granddad I mentioned that adopted Sam Houston. That's Chief Jolly. Now we call him Chief Jolly, and while he was a leader, I think he was more or less what we call a head man today. But Chief Jolly, he moved to Oklahoma. He died in Webbers Falls, and that's where he's buried. I asked some of these historical people that know a lot specifically about people like Chief Jolly. I said, so, he moved to Oklahoma in the 1830s, and he had a daughter that married a man in Tennessee when they were living there. And I said, that daughter and son-in-law stayed in Tennessee. I said, is he Cherokee? And of course, you can imagine the question being asked to the certain people that I was asking it to, and the answer I no doubt would have received. But fortunately, Samuel Isaac Upton, who historically married one of Chief Jolly's daughters, not his only daughter. Matter of fact, Sam Houston married one of his daughters, if I remember right. But he worked for what eventually would evolve into an Indian Affairs Commission, but it was a federal one in Washington, Tennessee. And there's a lot of documents of what he did for them, and moving stuff back and forth and selling stuff. I come from a long family of salesmen, just like you had said. Your dad could get up there and tell that story. My dad was the same way. He wasn't afraid to talk to nobody. People have said that he could sell ice to Eskimos. But my dad was a salesman. My granddad was a salesman. My great-granddad was a salesman. My great-great-granddad, all the way back about 5 or 6 generations on 2 different lines of my dad's family. It's kind of in my blood to talk, I guess. But that stuff's so critical and important, and I appreciate you sharing it. Now, we had mentioned already finances of state tribes and sustainability. That is really critical stuff. And that you're exploring some economic initiatives like cultural events and enterprises to build a long independence for your tribe. Are you are you open to some other ideas if people share those with you, or you got some other places? And you don't have to share what you're doing specifically, but it sounds like you've got something. I just wanted to revisit that question. You're heading in a good direction there with your tribe, and finances, like I said, is crucial.
Yeah, I'm open to all suggestions, all the help that we can get. I listen to anything because I do want us to move forward. One of my goals that we really are working on is to have a living village. We would love to have our grounds bring in the schools and let hopefully the kids would feel like they're stepping back in history. There's nothing more that you love more than a hands-on experience. You can hear it all you want to, but actually to see it and somewhat feel it stays with you more so than just hearing it. So this year we're going to have on Friday before the festival, we're advocating to get some of the schools to come in and actually experience what it was like and how the villages looked, because we're kind of replicating that. We have cabins out on our grounds. Actually, that's where I am every weekend pretty much. That's where I want to go. It's all week long. It's like I feel like I hold my breath all week long, but when I walk out onto our tribal grounds, it's like I made it. I'm here. This is my peace.
Yeah.
I can get away from all of it there, and you have to come and see it for yourself. It's really a beautiful place, and I want the kids to come out there and feel it. Now, my grandson, he's all about it. He loves it. He just turned 9, and I really didn't realize how much he was absorbing till he was at, we went to I think what it's called, the Thunder on the Three Notch at the Pioneer Museum in Troy, and where I had to speak, and they had a little reenactment of that battle. He actually got to play a part in that, but after I had spoke and it was all over with,
oh cool,
he repeated what I had said word for word, and I was like, oh my gosh, he was really listening to me. And then later, after he got my book, he was telling me about a very sad part in the story that almost made him cry. So I said, you've read it? He said, yeah, I read it, Gigi. Of course I read it. We've also put out a children's book, The Creation Story. And I know you've heard the story about the little people.
Oh, good.
So we had the illustration in there. He actually was the one who came up with the illustration for the little people. And then at our green corn ceremony this year, great. He stayed up all night with Seth, and he danced, he told stories, and he greeted the sun when it came up, and then he slept for 14 hours. But he loves it there. He's all about telling the story. So if any of other children who would come in and visit the grounds and see the living village could feel it like he does, then we have really accomplished something. I mean, that's the only way our stories are going to continue is through our children, and he's a great example of that.
Yeah, well, he has somebody really good to look up to, in my opinion, to make him want to be, maybe the next chief or vice chief or something. It sounds like he's headed in a good direction, and it's really, when I hear that the kids are participating, that's critical. Without the children, we have no future. I know that the years that my daughter spent in all of the museums that I have given lectures, that I have taught flute making classes, that I have attended their festivals. I know that all the years that we have spent going to those kinds of events, I know that they inspired my daughter to take anthropology, for example, and as I haven't told her this directly, but as a young native, I always hated anthropologists. But the whole notion of us having a native that's anthropologist, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, this is too good. I'm getting them back now.
Yeah.
I'm getting back at about all those anthropologists that are trying to, take our artifacts and dig up my grandparents and any other negative ideas I may have had as a teen or what have you. As an Indian youth, I used to really despise archaeologists, especially, and anthropologists. Now, if there's any archaeologists or anthropologists watching this show, and my good friend Massaw from one of the other episodes, he is a whole different kind, not to mention a native, but a whole different kind of anthropological researcher or archaeological researcher. He's the kind that I have the utmost respect for. And he's taught me that they're not all bad. But look, he's actually, in my opinion, a leader in his field. So he's doing things, and I'm hoping that my daughter sees what she has done in the last several years of college as a way to maybe help our people. I know that had to inspire her somewhat. All those times that she went to the events with us and things. So keep your grandson going in the right direction. It sounds like he's headed there. And if there's any way that any of us can ever figure out how to net and bring along any of those kids in this right direction, it's super critical. And off camera, you and I will talk about little people too, by the way.
Okay.
I've been talking about them for years and years, and it's stuff that I could honestly make a whole episode there again about, and maybe I'll call you back on for that.
I just wish they'd stop hiding stuff from me.
Yeah. When you get to the point that you figure out how to interact with them in a way that they don't hide stuff from you, it's a different world. It really is. And the fact that you talk about it, I know. Once again, this isn't something we planned on talking about. And while I'm watching the clock, I still have a couple of questions I want to ask you. But I do want to share with you that I know a lot of Cherokee stories about little people and Choctaw stories about them, because really Choctaws and Cherokees shared a lot of those. As a matter of fact, I was about to mention it's a federal Choctaw who's a friend of mine that he and I used to sit around and talk about little people all the time, because he had some personal stories, as I do. But one of my favorite Cherokee stories about them is how they will take a young native person and they'll raise them. And when the young person gets to be in their teens, at a certain period in time, they'll ask them, when they feel like they can make this judgment for themselves, they'll ask them, do you want to go back home with your people, or do you want to stay with us? And I know a lot of the original stories that brought those ideas about, and they're all powerful stories, but I know the backstories on these. As a matter of fact, I don't know if I've shared with you, but I've written a short film. Okay, so this is what happens. I start talking about little people.
And they start messing with you.
And they start messing with you. I'm going to double check something here real quick to make sure we're good. Okay. Yeah, I start talking about them and they're like, hey, wait a minute.
My mom used to tell me, when she was growing up, she used to tell me all the time that she used to play with the little people. And I would joke on her and say, "No, Mom, you just smoke way too much rabbit tobacco." But now she loves to hear the story about the little people. She says, "See, I told you I did."
Yeah, right. Yeah, so those stories have been in our culture for a while. I will tell you that they have meant the world to me. They're significant and important and really critical. I will tell you too that in my speaking about them, and then all of a sudden everything blows up, and I'm not sure what's going on. The episode, hopefully it's all intact somewhere. It should be, but I was about to mention that I have my flute making book here that I had written some time ago, and that I think I even mentioned in that book. And then here underneath of a stack of other books, oh my goodness, I have got a book about little people, but of course this one is this is good stuff. But there's a lot of old stories, news stories. There's lots of cool. Oh no, that's great. That's wonderful. That's wonderful stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah.
But in any case, like I said, they can mess you up. They really can. They have certainly affected my life. I mean, obviously. Hopefully, the rest of the episode is still intact. I won't know until we're done down the road here. But like I say, they've had a big effect on my life. So hopefully, it's going to be a good one. But anyway, let's see. Yeah, it looks like I've looked back on it. I think only I disappeared out of the episode. And to be honest with you, as funny as everything has been when I mentioned little people, I'm probably going to leave this in there just so that people know the seriousness of what I'm talking about.
That's right.
Yeah, what I'm talking about. Oh my goodness gracious. Yeah, they really will. I'll never forget my friend Eddie back in Oklahoma. He had run for the position of chief and ran for vice chief of his tribe. He is a different Cherokee tribe that's in Oklahoma, not the Cherokee Nation, but the Katuas. And he used to work with me when I lived out there. We worked at Greenleaf Nursery, and he told me stories about little people getting you and eating you. And I'm like, no, man, those are the wrong stories.
Yes.
I know.
Oh, no.
But that's how the stories evolved and changed when they moved to Oklahoma. It's different than the stories of that I've heard and read my whole life of them helping you and they do play jokes on you and take stuff from you and all this kind of mess, but all in all, I mean, they speak our language. They're not going to eat you. Like I was beginning to say, one of my favorite stories is about how they used to take little children, and then eventually when they've raised them and they've turned them loose and said, look, you can either leave or you can stay with us. The ones that do leave and go back to their people are always a little different. They're always either exceptional or, I think some of us are considered crazy, but they say that we are, the ones that are looked on as being leaders of our people. So, the fact that the little people stories are so important to you, I don't think you're allowed to keep your memories of your time when you were with them. At least most of us aren't. I think there are memories that some of us might have about them, but like I said, a couple things we'll talk about off camera about that. And I'm going to get to the last questions I have for you. Reflecting on your leadership since you've been chief and I believe vice chief of your tribe, what do you consider the most meaningful achievements that you've made so far? And I know this is one that's hard to answer when people ask you to talk about yourself. I know it's the hardest thing, but what are maybe your most proud achievements that you've done, or the achievements? Let me see, because I can tell the kind of person you are. I want to make sure I ask you the question in a way that you'll answer what I'm trying to ask you. What are the achievements of your tribe? How about that? since you've been in office that you're most proud of?
I guess I'll go back a little bit through the years. Like I told you earlier, when I first became a citizen and started coming to our ceremonies and our meetings, I can remember Green Corn only having 10 people there, maybe. This past Green Corn, we had over 100. So if you can rate a success on, I can go through the list. How many visits do we have to our website? How many followers do we have on our Facebook social media? How many visitors are coming to the tribe? How many people are showing up, just for our general meetings or for our Green Corn? If that is a sign of success, then I think we're there. I feel like we're there. And I think I told you yesterday, I guess I feel like maybe I've kind of let us out of the darkness. That makes sense. Because whereas before I felt like we're a bunch of mushrooms, now they're starting to see the light, and it's a sense of community. It's a sense of love. I have 4 sons and a grandson, but I can't tell you the number of young people that are in my tribe that I feel like they're my children too. They all are. The whole it's my family. Yeah. I've got lots of mothers and fathers and grandfathers in that tribe that I look up to, that I ask for advice. They have all led me. And I don't do it by myself. You're only as good as the people you surround yourself with. And I've got a wonderful family that surrounds us there. And we all work together. It's just a very strong sense of community. And to me, that's successful. So I can't say it's anything in particular. It's just the sense of a family. Yeah.
Well, that, I know I'm very biblically studied, and on occasion I'm biblically minded, although I don't consider myself to be any particular religion, not recognized, and especially not European or a American European religion. But my study of the Bible, for example, which I think it's a requirement when you're born in the South. But I think that one thing that it says that's really great, that I do have a great deal of respect for, is that you are as good as your family. Is one of the passages that says that a man is no good that can't take care of his family, and I see that for everybody. And I know it's hard to translate some of those ideas. I'll never forget. Okay, and this is kind of going off subject, but like I told you, sometimes I speak in parables, and sometimes it's rhymes. But it's how I get my point across. My third language, including English as my first language and German as my second language, my third language was Mandarin Chinese. And I'll never forget how proud my Mandarin Chinese teacher, she was from China, I'll never forget how proud she was to speak about when the new leader of China at that time, and this has been, like I said, I'm getting to be an old man. I'm halfway there, I think. But anyway, it was many years ago. I think back in the 1950s, if I'm not mistaken, or 60s, the leader of China had incorporated a new word in their vocabulary, and it was a new written character in their language. And listen to me carefully, Michelle. It was the word for woman. Okay? I'll never forget how proud she was that they finally come up with the word. And she told me some of the history of it, which I think is one of those behind the histories, like it had to do with his wife. And I'll never forget all the Chinese that I've forgotten, because I'm not in that community anymore, but all the Chinese language that I have forgotten, I'll never forget the word for woman is, and hopefully I can pronounce it well as I used to. It's Naoren, which means not a man. That's what the word means. Okay. I'd like to use that as a foreshadowing, as well as, okay, my son, who is a college student and has studied the Roman Empire up one side and down the other. He is the Roman Empire's biggest critic. Okay. You know, I don't know if you've seen my youngest boy, but his braid is down to his ankles. You know, he's a very proud Indian kid. Oh yeah, and he's been working on a language program for some time for some of our people, but very proud Indian kid, always talking about how this is Roman and that is Roman and this is Roman, and he's got me seeing Roman everywhere. But it has to do with the cultural idealism of our American culture today. It has a lot of Native American history in it, but they're missing one key factor, and that's the role of women, you know, in Native American history is so critical. Matter of fact, I should have brought the book in with me, but I've got a book that's got a couple of my great grandmothers in it that's about Native American women in history, and it's actually sitting on my kitchen table right now. But I had Interlibrary loaned it from I don't even know what library it came from because my library didn't have it, so I had to have them get me a copy of it, and I've been reading it because, like I said, it's got some of my great grandmothers in it, but it's also got a couple of men in it, including, you know, some historical figures we've talked about during this episode. But you know, Indian women are very significant and important, and just like Seth had mentioned in our episode, you know, the way he looks at his wife being the head of the household is the way I look at it. My wife will certainly, you know, tell you she agrees. I'm the one that stands up and speaks in front of people, no matter what country we're in or what people we're in front of. I'm the one that stands up and speaks, but she's the one that has the say-so in what we do, you know. So, and I don't mean a say-so, I mean the say-so, in case I didn't say it loud enough. She's the one that has the say-so in what we do. You know, she has the blanket that I gave her when we first met, you know, it was my offering to her. And, you know, she keeps it. Sometimes I look for it to be on the front porch sometimes, but it's still in the bedroom, you know. But anyway,
talking about
that's a role of
I want to talk about my spouse too.
Yeah.
He's retired.
Go
Sergeant
ahead.
Major. And I thank the Creator for this man. He has stood by me on everything that I have done with the tribe. He goes with me everywhere. He is my biggest fan, and he works very, very hard for our tribal family too. I envision it, and he builds it. And that's sort of how we work. We work side by side on everything, and he loves it as much as I do. So I don't think I could do it without him. He's just my biggest fan, and I appreciate everything that he does for me and for our tribe. And speaking about, you were talking about the Bible and religion, I have to share something that Levi, that's my grandson, said. He overheard us talking about one of our citizens, one of the grandmothers, had her grandchildren down there. And they came home to their father, and they were talking about the creator this, creator that. And her dad didn't particularly appreciate them calling God creator. And we were kind of going over that. Well, Levi was standing there, and he heard it, and he says, "Well, that's just dumb, Gigi. That's like saying the forest and the woods are two different things." So, oh my gosh, he gets it.
Oh, goodness.
He really gets it.
I was going to say, it's always so nice. It's always so nice when you practice these things, and then you hear the positive things repeated in the mouth of those young folks. I had one of those experiences in my life. And once again, we need to close the episode so that you and I can go about the rest of our busy day. But I wanted to share this one with you. I was on a news episode from one of my tribe's powwows, I guess last year, I think it was. And on the news channel's Facebook page, there were a couple of those hecklers that we were discussing, and that we'll probably continue to discuss, but hopefully we'll continue discussing them in a positive light, in a way that we can make things, smooth out the relationships we have with these poor ignorant people. But one of those hecklers had just gone off on my tribe because we're state recognized instead of federally recognized and what have you. And I heard a young man from another state-recognized tribe who is just now starting college. I had to check him out because I was so proud of what he said. But the federal tribe member was talking about how all of our people moved to Oklahoma, and he just really every step of the way was putting his foot in his mouth, and we would have recognized that, but the general public wouldn't know any better. And I think he probably knew what he was saying was, being politically correct, a farce, but or a stretch of the truth, really a flat out lie. But anyway, this young man stood up and said something, held his ground. He said, our people, our native, they just stayed in Alabama and went to work and got a job. And I'm like, wow, this kid really, yeah, no, that's the way I felt. I'm like, this kid got it. He really figured it out. So it's there. It seems dormant to you and me because we're older and we need this miracle to happen, but it's there and it's happening. And hopefully in the near future, after some painful exercises, hopefully certain other tribes in Alabama that are being run and organized by people who needed to retire many, many years ago, hopefully they'll find their way to receive some of the youth and some of the youth's ideas and plans, and hopefully it won't be people that are too young that are easily swayed by judgment of other people, including federal tribes, but hopefully there'll be a positive growth and some positive changes. But Michelle, I cannot thank you enough for joining me today, and really appreciate your powerful conversation that you have shared with me. Your thoughts on leadership and your commitment to your people shine through everything you do, from your community's advocacy to the cultural revitalization. I cannot speak. You are a template for how the rest of us, or I should say many of the rest of us, because I can't speak for everybody, but I can certainly speak for my own, need to be. And I really appreciate you so very much. No, thank you so much. If this episode has moved any of the viewers and taught you something new, or if you've learned something or have some questions even, please consider sharing it with others. And as always, thank you for supporting Left Behind Natives, where we continue to uplift the voices and the stories that deserve to be heard. Michelle, thank you so much. The rest of you for watching, thank you. And signing out for Left Behind Natives. I hope to see you all here again very soon.